Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today, all about logos. It is one of my favorite topics, and I'm thrilled to have you all here. I'm just going to get us warmed up. We've got people flying into the room, so I want to give everyone a chance to get on and get settled. But thank you all. If you're here, I always like to check to make sure that audio and screens and video are working. So please take a moment, say hi in the chat. We always like to know that you're here and that all of our technology is working. Where are you all? Where are you all today? Oh, fantastic. Oh, I love it. Sounds good. Wonderful. We are so lucky today. We're having an unseasonably lovely day in March in Philadelphia, which is always a nice treat. So thank you. So today our program is going to be, 45 to 60 minutes, somewhere in that range, depending on how chatty you all are and how many questions, and you might have a lot. Lots of times we do, and that's totally fine. Feel free as I'm going to pop questions in and answer each other's questions. I appreciate it. We've got people here from Maine and Rhode Island, California, Connecticut, Georgia, all over the place. So I'm thrilled to have people coming in from all over, all kinds of organizations, all sizes. And, I always think, people always feel bad about asking a question, oh, this is a dumb question. There are no dumb questions. People come to this work from all different worlds, and this may not be, work that you're used to doing. So ask whatever. And the other thing is, I obviously am running this class. I put the topic together, but you all have your own experiences. So if you have an answer, if somebody asks a question and you have some experience or some insight that could be helpful, pop it in. Please put it in there. You never know what answer. It may be my answer that's helpful to you, but it may be somebody else's answer that's helpful too. We all have different experiences and they all are valuable. So don't ever feel bad if you're not jumping on my toes. Even if you contradict me, even if something I say you've had a completely different experience with, that's okay. Put it into the chat. People, we all need to know the range of things. And I have to say, hi, Gerald. Yay, Philadelphia. I got somebody else here. It's always so funny when there's people from all over and I got nobody here that's local. But we've got people from all kinds of wonderful places. And so I am thrilled to have you here today. Yes, we are recording. So if you have people that you'd like to share this with, or you need to rewatch it, you're going to be getting a link from Ever. That is interesting. So I haven't seen a recording link there. That is fantastic. So we're going to jump in. So I always like to start with a question for you. So we all spend a lot of time on Zoom, right? We're all on computers, we're all on Zoom, we're all on webinars all the time. What made you decide to come and show up in person today? So we're talking about logos. I'm curious, what are you here for? What did you hope to learn? What are you looking to get out of this? What kind of decisions are you trying to make at your organization at this time that makes having a conversation? Oh, alternate logos, interesting. So Christine, tell me what you mean by alternate logos, meaning like a multiple ones that you can use interchangeably or hierarchy. Oh, that's interesting. I was hoping you told me. Yes, but trust me, I have lots of things to tell. But I always like to know, what is it that you're here for so that I can make sure that I weave that in. So creating a responsive and flexible logo system, JC. Yeah, that's great. I love that. We're going to talk about a couple of different ways to do that because there's lots of different ways to do that kind of stuff. So keep putting them in there and I'll make sure that I'm keeping an eye on it. How to represent different organization logos without overwhelming the marketing ad. Oh, that's a good one. I don't have a visual of that, but I can definitely speak to that. Dan's expanding operation and creating and rebranding divisions of the organization. Oh, this is really good. We're going to touch a little bit on hierarchy and definitely talking about that kind of expansion. Campaigns with separate branding. Oh, you guys are in the right place today. How do you maintain brand consistency? 3 programs with different logos, insight on co-branding. Love it. And then logos for special purposes without driving ourselves crazy. Oh, this is fantastic. So I am thrilled. I think we're going to be hitting all that stuff. So all of you guys, if we're going through this and you have like a more detail or something else you want me to follow up on, put it in there. As you can see, the chat can fly by pretty quickly. keep putting your stuff into chat because it's helpful. I have Megan Riley and Maggie Kraus in the background here. They can say hi. Megan is our art director. So if things are going along fast, Megan might jump in and answer a question even before I do. And then Maggie's here to handle any technical problems or any issues that you have. So feel free to put that stuff in there. And ask. We're not going to do hand raises, Dan, but put it, so if, because I don't, that I need to kind of put you in onto audio, and I'm not sure we're going to have time for that today. But if you have a question that you don't want to fly by in chat, that you really want to make sure that I see, use the Q&A feature. I have 2 screens. So if you see me looking off, it's just me looking at my second screen. So I have my Q&A up there, and that will stay there, and I'll see it until I close it out. So if you're worried that it might fly by and we could miss it, put your question into the Q&A. So that is it. Thank you so much for all of your great insight on what's going on in your organizations and what makes this, an appropriate conversation for you to have at this moment. So when we talk about logos, you guys are already there. You kind of have a sense of that this isn't a simple question. When we think about what's your logo, a lot of times what people are talking about is your organizational logo, which might also be called your primary logo or your main logo or your brand logo. Could be called any one of those different things, but it's that sort of big main thing that is organizational name. And a lot of times people think that that's the logo. Sometimes logos are sneaky and they start to pop up and appear in ways that you don't even realize. Maybe it's, a volunteer made a logo, or a committee chair or a department chair or a program lead made a logo for their program, and it starts to populate out into the world. Sometimes without you even knowing that it happened. Sometimes, has anybody ever had that happen where there's like, oh, where did that come from? Sometimes there's like maybe a style or a color or typography that somebody uses just as a design, and like it wasn't necessarily intended to be a logo, but it just starts to become one. So logos can kind of have like a diaspora effect, and they start popping up and growing. You might have logos for your programs. You might have like an annual fund or like a level of a society that has its own logo or branding. You might have events. Events often have their own branding. Sometimes they really need to. Events sometimes have very tight branding. Sometimes they have branding that's totally their own thing. What's the right thing to do? Sometimes you have campaigns, and campaigns and logos and events can be similar, but they're not always exactly the same thing. You might have had an anniversary or two in your history, and that you want to have a spin or a version or a totally separate logo for that anniversary. We do a lot of school and academic work. So there's teams and mascots that pop up in that world. They're often considered logos. And believe it or not, we have even done logos for strategic plans because they wanted to brand them and make them publicly accessible. So you've got all these different logos that are all kind of stemming out from your organizational brand. But then all of those things, because they build up and build up, they start to need to work or be looked at as this whole ecosystem of materials that need to work together in some form. But it's not necessarily one type of a form. There is this is the way you need to do your logos to make it work. And I'm going to show you a couple of different examples of how all of these different logos work. So a big question that people often ask is, what makes a good logo? Like, how do you design a good logo? So, Megan and I are both designers, and I'm like, oh, well, that's a complicated question. There's lots of different types of logos. And over here on the left of the screen, you're going to see examples of different structures of logos. So if you think about the Facebook logo, that's what, we would call a typographic logo. Now, conceptually, you could say that there's a blue box around it, and the blue box could be considered a graphical element. Or a lot of times it's just on a blue background, and the logo truly is just the words. Facebook is a custom typeface. That's not a real typeface. That is a completely designed, drawn, unique typeface that they've developed for themselves because they're Facebook and they can. But there's no other embellishment to it. And if you look at that compared to Feeding America, which is kind of almost nearly a typographic logo, but not totally. there is that they connected, they basically modified the typography and turned those two eyes into a chaff of wheat. So they took a typographic logo. We would call this an embellished logo, embellished typographic logo, where they blended the iconography, the imagery, the concept into the type style, right? Then you have other ones like Habitat for Humanity on the bottom there, which you see a graphic, or we would call that an icon or an image, or some of us in the industry we used to call it a bug. Don't know why, but that was the term for it. But it's a graphical image and it is paired with typography. Now, in some organizations, those always have to be used in lockstep. We call that a lockup. Like when you have the logo and the words together, that's called a lockup. Some organizations require that they're always used in concert together. Sometimes there's a version of it like this, horizontal. There's another version of it where it's stacked. And then in some organizations, they'll allow you to physically separate them. And some organizations will let you use just one or the other on its own. Now, Habitat for Humanity is a big national brand, but there's even bigger national brands than that. Like, I'm not sure that if somebody just saw the house with the people in it, would they automatically say that's Habitat for Humanity? But when you get down to images like Nike and the Olympics and Starbucks, these organizations have grown to a point where you can just use their imagery and you know who they are. Now, Nike has a typographical look. They've got that styled Nike look that they pair often with their swoosh, but they've reached a point where they don't necessarily need to do it anymore. It's not something that all of us get to quickly. I mean, these are large companies with large advertising budgets. And then the last one I'm going to point your attention to is the Salvation Army. That is what we would call an emblem logo, which means that the words are kind of fully encased into a shape or a seal or a circle or a badge or something like that. It's called an emblem. And in that case, it's not like the Facebook logo, which technically is also on a shape, but they can also flip that around and make that Facebook logo blue, and it still looks like the Facebook logo. If you took the words, the Salvation Army, out of that shield, it would no longer look like their logo. So it's the combination of the two. They're inseparable. They are, permanently joined together to make their logo. So there's lots of different structures. And so there really isn't an answer to what makes a good logo from a sense of it needs to be an image or it needs to be typography or it needs to be like that. Visually, there's lots of ways to make a good logo. So the way I would prefer to answer that question is what makes a good logo for you? So does your logo represent who you are today? When you're out there showing it, do you look at that logo and say, this really captures where we are, where we're going, like at this moment in time? Does it, and that's answering that is a combination of visually, does it feel current and of the moment? Does it make you look dated or does it make you look like you're moving forward? But it also speaks to like the iconography, the image, the style. Does it represent, like, have you changed since you've made your logo? Does your logo, does your image position you well against your competitors? Now, I know you're all nonprofit organizations, but trust me, you still have competitors. There is still somebody making a choice of, should we give money to this organization or this organization? Should we participate in an activity? Should we volunteer? There is always competition for people's time and money. So does your logo attract people, really position you well to make it clear who you are and make you stand out, be recognizable, and even more importantly, memorable for what you do? Do people understand you? So is it positioning you well? Is it attracting exactly the right people? Do you find that people get you and embrace you and are like, that's my people? Now, obviously, the logo is not, the logo can't do that on its own. You need a lot more, just like Nike. That swoosh did not make them a $1 zillion company on their own. They have other things. So, but is your logo helping? Is it contributing to that? Does it help those right people remember and understand you? So do they look at your logo and does that logo help clarify? Not all logos necessarily are helping clarify what you do. And that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be literal. Like Habitat for Humanity, it's about building houses at its heart. So they have a bit of a literal house type. It's like, here's some house and here's some people that are excited to be together. That's a pretty literal logo. You know, Facebook has no iconography. It's not literal. But they're able to use it at a level of frequency that everyone knows what Facebook does. So where are you on the spectrum of needing your logo to do some of the lift for you? And where are you on, we're going to create a logo and then all the other marketing we're going to do is going to bring meaning to that logo. It can work. It's just a different strategy, a different methodology. Takes a little longer sometimes. And then last, is it easy to use for all your needs? You know, if you have a really long horizontal name, I think I'm going to show you one like that. You know, a really long horizontal name doesn't work in a social media icon anymore. Do you have a way to do that without having to chop your logo in half or fuss with it or cut it, you know, in the ways that you need to do it? I can't tell you how many times over the years somebody has given us their logo and said, we like the only version of our logo we have is the one that we just right clicked on our website to get. So they don't have an editable clear file. You don't have a file you can make large. You don't have a file that doesn't have that white ugly box behind it that's from a JPEG. So when you're using your logo, is it easy to use technically? Is it easy to use in design? Is it easy to use because you have the right files? Is it functional for you? So I'm going to put up a little poll because, you know, I'm dying of curiosity to know what your answer is to that. So I'm going to relaunch this poll. So there we go. Launch that poll. So I'm curious, how would you guys answer that? When you look at those 5 goals, those 5 points, where are you? Where are you on your spectrum? And whichever you said, whether it's like, yeah, we're good or we're struggling, put it like, I'd love to know in the chat, when you look at those 5 things, even those of you that are saying, hey, we're doing pretty well. Is there a place that you think you're having more trouble? Like where is it? Like, is the logo perfect for everyone else and just not working for you? Or is it like, well, many technical problems, but just it's old or it's dated? What's going on? I'm curious. I would just put it into the chat and I will pay attention to that. So I'm going to just let it go for a minute and let a few more people. I'm gonna take a drink while we all finish. And then I promise I will show you the answers. Okay, so Leanne is saying there's this old and inflexible. Okay, got it. Christine's isn't always easy to use. The colors and shapes, I'm going to show you one like that. Colors and shapes can be difficult in some applications. That is absolutely, sometimes there's a logo that like, it only works on one background color. You can't, it doesn't work on the light. It doesn't work on the dark. Or if you put it over, you know, a photo, it's just impossible. Jazz Marie is saying it doesn't represent our work visually. Yeah, it doesn't represent, hard to read, another one. Oh, Terry, you poor thing. It says cartoonish. It's got to be hard to hear. You know, it's funny. We were working on a design once that somebody kept telling us that it looked like clip art. And I'm like, I can't tell Megan that, you know, but it turned out what they meant was they wanted it to have more of a dimensional effect and they meant flat art. You know, so it's interesting. We're going to talk a little bit of how words matter. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll. So fantastic. And I think I'm going to share the results. So the cool thing is many of you are saying that like you're successful, like your primary logo is successful in all or most situations. That's fantastic. So as we go in through this, tell me, okay, if your primary logo is successful, you know, you told me a little bit of some of the other reasons that you're here, but a number of you are like, we are not working on any level. So we're going to talk about that. So fantastic. I'm going to close that out and keep going here. So organizational brand. So we're just going to break down all those different types of logos. You know, we all pretty much know what organizational brand is. It's that sort of primary main logo that you're using. And typically you might need to have it in a couple of different versions. Even in your main logo, you have a couple of different versions. We have a school that we did a mascot logo for that it was literally, it was a mascot and then like typography that went with it. But because we wanted to give them just the mascot graphic and just the typographics, and then we wanted to give it to them in black and white and the color, and then we wanted to give it to them in full color and then in a line art version, just their main primary logo, 139 files. Right. So when people say we want to do we're going to update our logo, I think for you guys, like, it's important to remind the people that you're reporting to that, like, this is not, it seems simple. That's why they called it like when we talked about a bug, it's like this little simple thing that looks so cute and little when it's done. But the actual functionality of it is so much more complicated than a lot of us can manage, even just on your main logo. You know, like, look at this one over here, this God, I used to be able to say this so well when we worked with them. Association, Histiocytosis Association. This is a really long name. We did work on naming for them, but there's only so much you can do with the name of this very long, complicated disease. So for this one, we absolutely had to have a long version and we had to have a stacked version. For the Del Art logo, you'll see their style guide later for what we have for them. This is their sort of square primary logo, like their snappy, catchy visual version. But we have a more formal version of the logo that says the Delaware Art Museum next to it, as opposed to stacked on top of it. So we sometimes, even in logos, even in their main logo, we have both formal and less formal versions of it. There's so many things that we need to think about. So then you get down from your main logo into your program logos. And I know we might have some people, if you guys are here today, let me know. We had a number of people from the Southern New Jersey Perinatal Cooperative sign up for the event. So if you're here, hi, how are you? Love you. So glad your logo is still working. So the Perinatal Cooperative was in a space when we redid their logo. At the end, you're gonna see their original logo, where they wanted to begin to have like more of a parent entity, like really showing that this organization was the organization that managed and kind of brought together all of these other programs. But as you can see, a lot of their programs, they all have their own individual look. Now, for your organization, you might look at this and go, oh my gosh, no. But that doesn't mean it doesn't work for them. There are lots and lots of different ways to build a logo system. And this is what we would define as what we call an individualistic hierarchy. You know, each of these logos kind of has its own look. They have their own fonts, and they've got lots of words in them. This is from a couple of years ago. They've evolved some of these since then, brought them a little bit more into the blue color system, and streamlined them a little bit. But, you know, probably not unlike you, they're a complex organization. Some of these programs were programs that existed and they brought under their umbrellas. Some of these programs are programs that have a strong program leader and lots of identity in their community around their current imagery. So it's not always as simple as saying, we changed our parent brand and now everyone's going to be blue, period, change. Sometimes you can do that, but sometimes there's value in individualistic branding. If you think about a company like Procter & Gamble or Unilever, like they own brands like Colgate and Tide and soft and dry deodorant, and each of those has their own brand. You probably don't even know that Procter & Gamble owns Tide because they don't care. They want you to know the Tide and get attached to the Tide brand. So this is one approach to like beginning to build out your ecosystem with your programs. There's a completely different approach too. And those, you know, many of us at our colleges that we went to have seen the university system grow over the last 20, 30 years. You know, some of you may be at a life stage that when you went to your college, it was named something different or looked different. It had its own look. You might have gone to, you know, I live in Philadelphia. We had, it's Temple University, and then there's the Fox School of Business, right? And the Fox School of Business had its own logo, its own identity. But over time, a lot of larger universities are moving into this is called a master brand hierarchy, a kind of cohesive thing where there is one look, and then that look is applied with minimal moderation, minimal variation, minimal change. As you can see, there's some variation, and it's funny. At the end, I'm going to send, there's a link to a talk that we did, a session like this, a community webinar with Justin Flex, who's the communication director at Wharton, about how at one point they added that line. See the Penn Nursing logo, that they added the line? That's all they did. They added a line and it put complete chaos into the system. Now they've got to go back through and just do that minor little update to all of these logos to get them all back into the branding system. So it's important as you're thinking about your logo process, whether you're changing your hierarchy, how much you're going to do to pull your systems together and create a tight master brand system or a more wide open individualistic system. And then there's multiple other systems in the middle. And if this is interesting to you, I'm going to have a poll at the end that says, what more do you want to hear about? How do you want us to go deeper? Do you want to hear about that? Yes, Jamie, the Penn logo that's on the left is their official logo. So we would call that their organizational logo. So that's their main parent entity logo on the left. So then campaigns. So a number of you talked about events and campaigns. So a campaign may have a logo. So we do a lot of giving days for people. We do all different campaigns, but for some reason, we do an awful lot of giving days for people that have reached the point where they're moving off of the masses of Giving Tuesday and they want to have their own individualistic giving day. This is a point in your moment where you can really think about, how do we brand this campaign for our organization? Does it look exactly like our organization? A little one step different, two steps different? We often talk about it like, do you want to look like siblings, cousins, distant friends? You know, you can make an argument for any of those methodologies. The thing is, the further you get away, the more individualistic you look, the energy, like think about the marketing energy that needs to go into the programs in order to get each of those identities to build awareness, versus like you looked at those Penn logos, all consistent. You could see any one of those sub schools on the front of a sweatshirt and you would instantly know it's Penn. You know, and for some people, there's a tremendous value to that. From a marketing cohesion, from people, if you don't have a lot of little buckets to put your marketing money into, thinking about how you can get that synergy from the whole being greater than the sum of the parts may be a valuable way for you to look at your logo strategy. So in this case, what are some of the things that you notice? So on the left is the Smith Memorial Playground logo. And then the Play It Forward is the campaign logos. What are some of the things that you guys can see about where they're similar and where they're different? Exactly, Tara, right? Color consistency. So we pulled the same colors. Yes, yeah. Jazz, oh my gosh, you're so good. Like it flew too fast. Jazz Marie, yes, we added yellow to the campaign. So I think that both of you are making really good, important points. We pulled the colors from the main logo, but we wanted this campaign to feel a little bit special. We wanted all the communications around the campaign to be kind of segmented and identified as a group away from all of the other stuff. We didn't want this to just get blended in with everything else. So Megan added this yellow color to differentiate the campaign communications from the other communications. But notice it's in the marketing, but it's not in the logo, because we were thinking about, how do we handle this brand consistency? So the tagline font, "Give the Gift of Play," is the same font as the Smith Memorial Playground font. And it's all lowercase. You don't see it in the main logo, but in other marketing they use all lowercase like that. So that's consistent for them. But we added this new font, and it's playful and it's fun, but because it's not really adding a font to their system, we use the font to make a typographic logo. And then we created, like with the loop of the R, we created the little heart, and then that heart became a graphic that then Megan used to build out iconography for the campaign. As you can see, we used it here to create like a thermometer effect. So right, yeah, Jessica, and we added a more casual font to the campaign, but kept it perfect. So that's what we did. And so this is an important thing for you to notice when you're looking at this and when you're trying to build out things. First, you have to think about how tight, how close, like how comfortable are you? Because what you need to understand is the more things you get away, the further it will get away from your brand. So you can change some things, but if we change the font and the colors and the typography style, it would look like an individualistic brand strategy. If we kept the Smith logo and only kept it into Smith, tight, it might not have looked unique enough or fun enough to feel like something that people were going to get excited about. So campaigns can be very helpful. Like there's lots of giving days, capital campaigns, advocacy campaigns, issue awareness. All of those things might benefit from having a look and feel to really help people hone in on doing this. And the other thing about Smith, we're actually going to be talking about this in our vision, in our new publication we're going to be putting out. But we created this whole ecosystem and then turned it over to them. And now for the last 2 years, they've been managing it on their own because it basically has its own little micro brand within the master brand. So then you might also have events, and events are always a tricky one. Like people always ask me like, oh, does it have to be blue again? The answer is it depends. Do you need it to be blue or purple or whatever your color is in order to keep people associating this event with you? Or can it be unique? Are you an organization where the event, the brand of the event is the star and the organization is sort of sometimes it's invisible underneath of it. Like think of all those runs, the different runs or different events that people participate in. They raise a lot of money. There are ones that I'm sure people are doing the run because they're doing the run. They don't know or really even think about who the organization is. The question is that a good thing or not a good thing for your organization? This one I'm showing you because I thought it was really interesting because the Philadelphia Education Fund, the blue rectangle with the star in it, that is the organization logo. So what they did was they actually attached their event logo to their organization logo. You can see this is from a long time ago, but this is such a rare example. It's hard for me to find something that's current that they do this. And I have to say, this is from 2013 and it still looks perfectly fine. Like they didn't do anything super trendy, super fun. They didn't go with a cool, cute font because they wanted consistency. And so what we do for them is we then put that sparkle into the design of the materials. So the logo is the same year after year after year. You can see all they have to change is the year. So that means consistency, brand building. It gets that, like, I've seen it. It also means they don't have to spend money on updating a font, updating a logo all the time. We have other people that we work with where every single year they completely redesign the logo. Lots of conferences do that. Both can work. What's your strategy? And this is also a surprising one. So sometimes your fund might have its own look or own logo. You might have like a special society for certain level donors. So this is a private school in New York, and they wanted to brand their fund, their giving fund, their society. And I'm going to show you more from this school so you see how this fits into their ecosystem. But this is something that I have to say, I'm not sure I'd recommend for everyone, but it's interesting. And I wanted to try and bring you things that are a little distinctive, a little unique, so that you could really see what are some different ways that you might not have thought of. So it's a school, and they were a one ask a year organization, and they wanted to increase their ask rate. They wanted to be able to go out and talk to people more often about how this fund helps things throughout the year. A lot of times when people say annual fund, there's that thing in your head that means, oh, I give annually, but no, this is the money that helps you do things throughout the year. And this is the money that helps them do the special things. And so they have like this acorn and tree look and an oak leaf look for everything. So this logo is basically designed to be the tree, the leaves blowing throughout the year. Like they come off and they go forward, and they wanted them each like 4-season colors so that each season they could send out something that looked a little new to kind of catch the eye of the person that was looking at it, while still keeping that consistency of that they recognize the logo, but each season it changes because give again. Just an interesting, different way to consider thinking about things. But this is also a small private school. People are very familiar with the acorn and the oak leaf iconography. They're very attached in this community, and they're mostly asking their parents and their alumni. So this is a very attached group that's paying attention. The things you can do with that audience are different than what you can do if your goal is to get thousands of people to show up at a trade show. You know what I mean? You've got to always think about your audience. It really impacts the decisions you make and what strategies you might take. Anniversaries, another one. Lots of people do anniversary logos, and there's lots of different ways to do it. You can take your logo kind of like they did in the event, keep your existing logo and attach something to it. Like RHD, that their normal logo is horizontal. They just stacked it and then did an entirely separate anniversary logo and put it next to it. Chestnut Hill kept their typography and swapped out their primary logo, their primary iconography, And then this is Delaware Hospice, where they like doing things with banners. So they put a banner under the top one is one of their programs. And then the bottom one is the Delaware Hospice is their primary logo. And we created this 40th anniversary wraparound for it. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it. You can do it. The important thing to remember about an anniversary logo is you're going to spend a whole bunch of time changing all of your materials to that anniversary logo, use it for a year, and then you've got to change them all back. You have to think about like, are you doing anything else that year that's making that time worth it? You know, many of you might be the only communications person on your team. It's a lot of work to wind it up and then wind it back down again in a year. So make that anniversary worth it. Like, what else are you doing? Like, how are you celebrating? We've had clients that literally changing their logo is the only thing that they did. And it's hard to not feel like, and what did that get you? So if you're going to take the time to make something visually special, I would really look at like, how can you maximize that? How can you make sure that the effort is going to reward you? And then teams and mascots. I know many of you are probably not schools, so I'm not going to belabor that, but there's a lot that can be done. And interestingly enough, when we do team and mascot logos, there's still a school structured entity on top of it. So a lot of times we'll do like a very visual, very graphic team logo. And then we do like a softened or more subtle version of it for the business. And what we like to do with that is we take an element. So sometimes you have an entirety of a logo, but you can pull, oh, yes. All right, Hannah, we'll share everything. So this is something to think about so for some schools, we take the entire visual image and just put it with typography. But this one I thought was kind of interesting because this is a middle school. And so we have this little pawn growing up to like feel like a king or a queen, and like to make them feel like they're bigger. And so, but you know, for the adults, for the staff, for the structure, we are using this just the crown part of it. And it's like an interesting, different way to think about it. Now, granted, fair warning, it makes everything more complicated because now there's a bazillion different logos, and then you have to start monitoring who gets to use what when. So before you make your system complicated, think about when it leaves your office, what has to happen to it? Who's managing it? Who are you allowing to touch it? What happens? You know, all of you that are at schools, you know that you've seen some parent volunteer do something that makes you want to cry, right? So you have to think about how you're going to manage it, how narrow the cattle sheets are and how wide they are, what you're going to be comfortable with. Yeah, right. Our athletic department is very creative, right? Lots of, yeah, we're about to go into a new school logo process for exactly that reason. There is like just massive wandering off of the logos, and it's time to kind of tighten it up. So this is the Hurley School. So I told you that I showed you the tree logo. So the top one we didn't do. That was their existing logo, and they have this acorn and they have the leaf. And they have this serif font. Now, that's in their logo. In their marketing, look in the middle logo. They also are using that slightly narrow sans serif font as well. So we're putting this whole architecture, they have a little bit of each. So we created a campaign logo for a giving day that used a totally new font because special logo self-contained. That font is not part of their brand system. It's only for that logo. So while it's a different font, it's a logo. The colors that are in that are actually represent each of their schools. So we used each color from each of their different schools because that was a giving day to raise money for all the different schools, all the different, it's all the different programs and schools that they have. The thankful one is a Thanksgiving fundraiser. So we actually took the concept of the heart and the color palette of fall and of their green to create that logo. And it's an oak leaf, but it's just made up out of hearts. So you can see where it kind of sits there in the middle in between the tree on the right and the acorn on the left, but it's still, they're pretty individualistic, but we tie them all together through the green color. And for the most part, we use one of the two school fonts. Once you've got all this stuff together, you've got to document it. You've got to like really focus on like, okay, once you start getting complicated, if you don't want that sort of wandering off that that everyone's talking about, how everyone's out there making their own thing, we create style guides. So do any of you guys have style guides? Are they helpful? So we document it. And so this is the one I was telling you about here. So in this one, same thing. This is their master main logo. And yet still there's 4 different versions just in purple. We still also have them in white and in black. So we've got a without the box and a with the box, and we have the horizontal formal version and the other one. So you've also got to make it clear which one is the primary. So here you document this is the preferred logo, right? Because the more choices you give, the more people the more things are going to happen. This is just designers being neurotic. You know, we like to be like, please do not encroach on our logo. And then this is my favorite page. We call it the don't taunt the logo page. Like, don't change it. Don't put your own font in it. Don't squeeze it. Don't squish it. Don't twist it. Don't put it on top of tiger stripes. Like, don't mess with the logo, you know? So that's it, because you'll see all this weird stuff happening. Document your colors and then document use case examples. Okay, if you have a photo, use the white logo, please, for the, use the white logo. Don't put the colored logo on top of a photograph because it's just not going to be readable. So give people a couple of examples of how to use the logos, and you'll probably get a lot more, can't say compliance because who knows, but you'll give people more to work with to help them. Okay, so now we're going to back up. That's going forward. Now we're going to back up. If you're at a stage, so, and are any of you at a stage, like I think a lot of you said, you're at a stage where you're starting to think about whether you want to change your main logo or how you want to like rethink the logos that you have, or it's time to start creating some logos. This can be a challenging conversation a lot of times because the way designers speak in here is often different than the way business people speak in here. We often joke about the word modern. You know, when people say we want a modern logo. Okay, so if I said modern to you, what does the word modern mean to any of you? Visually, like how would you describe what modern means? It could mean anything. So I often have to ask things like, well, by modern, do you mean SpaceX? Do you mean IKEA? Do you mean Mercedes? Like, do you mean, like, what does modern mean to you? Because everyone has a picture in their head of what a word means. So you need to keep asking questions until you are really clear on what people mean by the words that they use. When you say classic, it's funny. I'm listening to a book right now, and they were just talking about the idea of like liking classical music. Oh no, it wasn't. It was, oh, this is really even more shallow. I was watching Survivor last night, and somebody on Survivor said, I like the classics, like Led Zeppelin and The Cure. And I was like, okay, the other person was not talking about classical music, meaning the same thing. And I was like, that's such a great example that it's not just visual. Classics to one person might mean Beethoven, and to somebody else means Led Zeppelin. I know, isn't that hilarious? And of course, yeah, for the next group, I'm gonna have to pretend I read that in a nice, smart book, but actually, no, I was watching Survivor. So we do a creative brief, and it is so helpful to do a creative brief because it helps you get some clarity and really tease out, what do you mean by what you say? And then asking for people to, okay, so if you're saying you want a modern logo, tell me an example of that. If you're saying you want a graphical logo or an image-based logo, somebody might be like, oh, I want a really great graphical logo, like Facebook. And you're going to be like, that's not what I would call that. So it is so important to vet out what people mean by the words that they use. So ask a lot of questions. So when you say trendy, what's a trendy logo? Okay. And then you have to get deeper. So if we do a trendy logo, how long do you think that's going to last? Is that okay? So if we pick this direction and it only lasts 5 years, is that cool? Are we going to have the money, the time, the bandwidth in 5 years to update or change our logo? Is that good for our organization because it's going to keep us moving? Or is that bad because they just got used to it and now we're changing it again? Think through, like, what do people mean? Everyone wants somebody to be on trend. That may be good for you, or it may not. If you're not going to have the money and the time to go through this again, and if it's going to take you 3 to 4 years to get your people indoctrinated to your new image, you do not want to be changing it again in a few years because, nobody's doing psychedelic gradations anymore, and that looks dated now. So think about that. There's ways to be forward leaning without pushing yourselves to a level where it puts you into a box. So wrapping up here, and then we're going to have some time for some questions, right? How do you know when it's time to change? A lot of you are already there and you already have pretty good ideas that it's time to the change, but some of you, it may be that you're there, but you still have to convince the people that say yes to the budget and the change to like join you on the, it's time for us to be there. So here are some things, some like reasons that are like not graphic design reasons, because I'm an illustrator and a designer by training, and even I know pretty doesn't make people make decisions. I don't like it is not a way people are going to make, no one's going to get on board for that. So we need to be able to give people business use cases in order to get them to make visual, strategic brand decisions. You guys know that visual matters, but not everybody that has the power to say yes is going to feel like that's a strong enough argument. So my job is to give you better arguments, right? So one reason to change your image, change your logo, is because you're trying to telegraph change. So if you have made a big change, like, so maybe you've just gone through strategic planning. Very often there's like a bullet list on your strategic plan that says do something about brand. And if you have that strategic plan where like address branding is on there, and then everyone's like, well, what does that mean? Right? So if you have really like above that bullet, address brand is usually like the last bullet, but above it might be like improve DEI or make sure that people understand our science or something different, that you're saying we've been over here and we are moving our North Star. If you're trying to be different, you sometimes looking different helps create a visual hook that makes people pay attention to what you're saying. So when you want to get people to pay attention to your why, sometimes you need to show them your what. Like sometimes you need to show them you're different so that they believe it, indoctrinated, and are paying more attention. That's what we did for the Delaware Art Museum. They changed their strategic plan. Then we put them through a whole strategic branding where we changed their positioning, changed their messaging, adjusted their audience. We did all of those shifts. We weren't even decided that we were going to change the logo. There's really nothing wrong with their original logo, but we changed it because we wanted people to lock in to the fact that things were different here now. Sometimes you need to level up to be competitive, right? Sometimes you're at a stage where you're like, I am ready to go out and pitch Microsoft for our next big grant. I can't go out to them looking like this. Like we're not, like this look is not in alignment. Like you're just not feeling, it's not that it's bad necessarily, but you're just like, this doesn't represent us well. And in this case, this is an organization, like their original logo was sort of like a soup, like it was, they're in health and human services, and they wanted to feel like, they wanted their staff to feel like superheroes, which is admirable. But they just reached a new level, and that wasn't what they wanted. That wasn't how they wanted to represent themselves anymore. They didn't like the look, and it did feel a little, just not right for them. Sometimes I hate to say it, it is actually dated. Like there's some times you cannot get around the fact that this is just dated, right? And it just wasn't making them feel like the organization that they wanted to be today. So updated, changed. Also, this was also at the end of a fully strategic plan that really also said, this is who we want to be now. How do we represent that? And then this is the perinatal cooperative. So in their case, they had this triangle shaped logo, which is probably the hardest thing to work with. Any of you that are, have been designer, triangles are hard. If you're not a designer, don't pick a triangle. Like getting that balance on that peak, figuring out where the baseline is of it is really tough. Plus, it was an older logo, so it wasn't drawn well at the time. And so they didn't really want to rebrand. They liked their identity. They liked their idea. They just needed something more technical and more functional for them. So we changed the shape, we redrew it, smoothed it out, and updated the typography to a way that it just, everybody knows where to align it now. Because you can see there's really, how do you even know over here? And it's tough. They have long words too. You can't always change that. So what can you do to help move it forward? And then the last one is you might be expanding or realigning your hierarchy. I know a number of you were saying you've got hierarchy issues. So this is an organization that has that had evolved into two divisions. They had both corporate work that they did, but they also work in the nonprofit and museum space. And what they were finding is that the language, the words, the projects, like the projects from one weren't resonating for the other. And they were like, we really need to separate these into two separate divisions. And they had to figure out, where are they two separate companies or are they two separate divisions of one company? Is there going to be a parent logo, or are they going to be two peer logos? In their case, they picked two peer logos. That was what was right for them. But sometimes it's a parent logo and then division one, division two, structure and hierarchy. And then when you're deciding to make a change, you want to think about what is the impact of your change. There are multiple different approaches that you can take, but one is revolution, and one is evolution. So many logos go through evolution. So if you're thinking about of changing, you may not necessarily have to like throw out the baby with the bathwater, as they say. You don't necessarily have to change everything. Like Starbucks went through one significant change, but is it? They basically took their mermaid logo and put it in the middle of an emblem logo. And then over time, then they went back and updated and refreshed their mermaid logo, but didn't change their emblem. And now they got rid of the outside of the emblem, the typography, and they're just their emblem because they've reached a point where they don't need it. Slow, long, let's say this from 1971 to 2023, 2024. I can't remember exactly when they did it. Probably 2021 was when I pulled this. Versus Animal Planet, wholesale change, font change, color change, shape change, format change. Every single thing is different. So like imagine scrolling through your channels and you're used to looking for Animal Planet with this green shape thing, and now it's a blue elephant. Imagine the level of marketing they have to do to get people to scroll through and find their channel and remember it's a blue elephant now. It's not a green graphic. So some things to think about. So wrapping up, and then I got a bunch of questions coming in that I'm going to shoot for here. Do your logos represent who you are today? Position you well against your competitors? Attract exactly the right people? Help the right people remember and understand you? And are they easy to use in all the ways that are needed? We have a couple of resources here, and then I'm going to jump into question. So we do these community webinars pretty often. Like we're actually escalating them even faster. And so we're putting the archive of them. They're up on YouTube. So you can find us on YouTube if that's where you like to play. But they're also on our website at iriscreative.com, and you just can go into resources and they're in webinars. These are two that I pulled because they happen to be about this subject. So on the left is Managing Brand at Wharton. If you want to hear more about what the Penn's issues and what the University of Pennsylvania is doing and how they're managing that very, very tight brand. And then this is another interesting one that we did with somebody that came to us when they had their logo, but then they had to take it and bring it out into they didn't have a style guide. They didn't have a look. They didn't have a feel. They didn't have any of that. Megan just put the direct links to them into the chat for you. So they could be helpful. And if any of this seems like it would be worth having a short conversation, if this has been like, this is great, but I'd like to talk about my problem a little bit further, and it's something that you think that we might be able to help you with, Megan's going to pop a link in that I'm happy to offer you like a 15-minute discovery call to just kind of brainstorm and talk about it and perhaps see if there's a way that we might be able to help you navigate this journey. And if you do that, there's this guide that we're going to send you. It's a logo design worksheet that'll help you kind of think through some of those creative brief questions that we talked about. So that's what I have. So I'm going to jump over in the last few minutes that we have here and see the questions that are popping in. And Megan, if there's any questions that came in through the chat that I need to pay attention to, I will scroll back and look at those as well. So Alex has said, have you dealt with a new rebranding and a new logo launch that coincides with the launch of changing our company's name? Yep, if you're going to change your company's name, usually there's a logo change that goes with it. So that's sort of all wholesale. So absolutely. And so the key thing for you is you've really got to think about your launch strategy. You've got to think about not just like, how are we going to announce this, but like kind of like Animal Planet. Like if we're really, really doing a big change, I would say even before you're going into it, you've got to think about the budget you're putting into the launch communications plan and strategy after it. So often people focus on, we've got to think about our strategy. We've got to change our name. We've got to do a new logo, and we've got to tell people what we're different, and we got to put it on our website. So we've got it, like, you've got to do all that stuff, but if you're changing your name and changing your look, you definitely want to think about how are we going to indoctrinate people into that. The other things that you might want to think about is there anything from your existing brand that people are attached to or that are serving you well that may be worth pulling through to help soften the landing on your change? Maybe it's, we're going to keep the color the same. That there's one that we're about to go into that we already know before we're starting that the color isn't changing because we're making such a big other change that's going to be very emotional. It's a school. So we're keeping the colors so that, like, we have to give people something to stay hooked into, to help. Part of it is to help them accept the change, but part of it is it's just going to make some of the other decisions and some of the mental transition a little bit easier. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you need any follow-up on that. So Tara's asking, what are your thoughts on emoticon or avatar versus the regular logo and how to maintain recognition between them? Oh my gosh, Tara, I almost put a slide in about this, but I have so much that I'm like, I'll never get to it if I get it. So thank you for asking that question. I think Tara, Maggie might know, we either wrote a LinkedIn post or we have a newsletter on LinkedIn. I'm going to just jump to the next slide too, so you can get to it. So we have a newsletter on LinkedIn called Focal Point, and we were just talking about that. I'm pretty sure either in Focal Point or on a LinkedIn message. So if you go find it, you'll be able to read about it in there because I talk about a couple of points in that. But I think it's so smart that you're thinking about that, because that whole, like, how does our logo look as an avatar? How does our logo look when it's this big, when it's super tiny? And how does it look when it's up in a tab? How does it look when we're responding to people on social? So important. And so there's a couple things. Number one, you like ditch the tagline. You got to have a version of it that doesn't have all the tiny little words. But usually what we say is there one sort of distinctive or recognizable thing about your logo? And maybe it's the color. Maybe it's your graphic maybe your graphic could be simplified a little bit more. Maybe you could, like, I've seen some people that just, like, if they have a typographic logo, they just use like the big first S if it's a distinctive font. So absolutely, I think that there should 100% be cohesion. Somebody should be able to look in a tab. Like, I always have 1,000 tabs open. I'm sure you guys do too. I want to be able to scroll through my tabs and know which one to click on without having to read the words. So I would say keep breaking down and breaking down and breaking down that logo until somebody says, I don't recognize that it's you. So look for the simplest way that you can do it. Oh, thanks, Maggie. That's fantastic. And then Tara's also saying, I love this. How big of a pain in the butt is changing your organizational name? Like removing one word. Oh, Tara, this is the perfect question. So here's the thing that you all really need to know. Like, I'm in the business of helping people make this change, but I'm also in the business of giving people clarity before you jump into something that's going to turn into a nightmare for yourself. I told you about how Penn added a line and they had to go back in and change everything. They have to go back in and update that logo on every single piece of material. If you change a word, a color, a font, a line, you are basically, from a labor perspective, doing the same amount of work as if you changed everything. So make sure that when you're going through a change that you're changing, that you really do need to make the change, and that you're changing enough so that you're not going to have to chip and pick away at it. What you don't want is 30 different versions of your logo all in play to the point where nobody knows what the right version of your logo is. It's really, really hard. However, if you're at a stage where you are changing your name because you need to change your name, usually you're not at that thinking point because, it's a whim. Usually it's something that you need to do. But again, you need to really prepare for both the labor time and the indoctrination time. So now what we typically do when we're going through a process like this is we'll do a communication audit first. So we start with the communication audit so we can really document, here are all the things that are happening. Like, here are all the things that this logo needs to get applied to. And then on the other side of a logo design project, we go back and look at the communication audit and we break it down into 3 categories. What has to be changed over so that you can launch? Some people are willing to launch with just sticking their new logo on their old website. Some, like with the Delaware Art Museum, we had that logo done almost a year before we launched because we had to do a whole website, and it was a complicated website. So we held off launching until everything was done. Sometimes that's one way to do it, not the only way. So what do you need to have ready in order to launch? Do you need new business cards? Do you need your website? Do you need new PowerPoints? Do you want backgrounds? What do you need? Second thing to look at, second category, what needs to go live within the next 3 months, maybe 6 months? Like, do you have an event coming up? What are the like next big group of things that like got to get going? And then group 3 is what can safely wait and get done probably over the next 18 months. And you need to prepare your higher ups that this is going to be a transition that happens over time. I don't care how few or how lot stuff that you have to do is it's a lot of materials to change. And this isn't the only thing that you're working on. Like if you're managing a brand transition process, chances are you've got 20 others plates spinning at the same time. So you need to make sure that everyone's expectations are set for, we have a plan, this is how it's going to go. So going into it as a structured process, not like, let's make it blue, will be your friend, and having a mapped out process for how are we going to change, how are we going to launch, and how are we going to transition? 3 key phases, right? Okay, so, all right, so I have one long thing in here. I just want to make sure this long one came in. So Martinique saying we're a nonprofit that has a national office that set brand guidelines for our primary logo, but we also have 2 programs specific to our location. The only consistent thing about these is the color blue. Right now, we co-brand our primary logo. Should we find a way to have the main logo with the other 2 logos stacked and always use all 3? So everyone will associate both programs with us. So I guess, Martinique, the answer is it depends. So some of it depends on how important is it that your programs are associated with the parent organization. One question to ask yourselves, how important is it? Another thing to ask is visually, if you stack them all together, does it become a giant blob that is unparsable by humans, right? Is that it? Another way to do it, and if you guys want to talk more about brand hierarchy, we can talk about that in a future thing. Another way to do it is to have your program logo, that we call this an endorsed brand. So you can have your program logo, and underneath of it, just in typography, you can say a program of parent organization name, just in typography. So that's another way. So that's another way to do it. So I'm going to pop up this little poll for those of you that are still here. I have one more little poll I'm going to put up, because I'm curious for you, has this been helpful? Oh, wait, that is the wrong one. I'm going to get the new one. Oh, wait, that's it. No, I got it. Zoom just changed how they did polls, so I got to switch it out. So we're going to launch this one. So thank you all for being here. I'm super curious. Was this helpful? I would love to know if there's one takeaway that you have. What's the best, like, what's been the most helpful thing that you got out of this conversation? And if this is a conversation, if there's any little piece of a thing that I talked about today, is there anything you want me to dig into more? Anything that you're like, I could use a whole session just on that? We'll create them, because we're doing more of these. So we want to do more of these. So it's really helpful to know, like, what would be the most helpful for thing to you to take it from this broad general conversation down into something specific. And I'm going to scroll down because I think there's a new message and I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody's question. All right, fantastic. So, and if there's anything that I just listed a few things here, and these are just branding topics. We do publications, we do all these different things. So, so thank you very much today. If this has been helpful, and if having a further conversation or even maybe getting some help with some of this will be useful to you, Megan or Maggie, one of them, popped the link in, and maybe you can pop it in one more time to schedule a discovery call. We have a couple of time slots set up. They're going to fill. So make sure that you grab a time slot that works for you. It's also posted here. And if you do that, then we're going to also send you that form, that sort of worksheet, so that you can begin to strategize and think through, the kind of questions you need to be asking yourselves and your team as you go through a process like this. And happy to have a 15-minute conversation to like begin the conversation, send you on your way, or begin to have a conversation about like, what does it take? What does it cost? All that kind of stuff, if that would be helpful for you. So thank you all. I hope this has been helpful. I'm just going to pop back in. There we go. Yes, you're going to get the link to this. Please feel free to share it. If there's somebody else that wasn't here today that would benefit from this conversation, feel free to share this link. Thank you all for being here today. I hope that you got some useful tips for you to move along with your process. And if there's any of you that we could help, we'd be happy to have a conversation with you. Take care and stay tuned. Oh, the next one that's coming, the next one's going to be really fun. We're going to be bringing Bridget, one of our team members. Bridget's going to come on, and we're going to talk about how do we use public relations to tell deeper stories, for events, for campaigns, for these kind of things where we're trying to get people to pay attention and write about us? How do we find those great stories? So I hope that that's interesting to you, and you'll come back and learn a little bit more about what's next on your list. Take care, and see you next time. Bye.